morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser on a Wednesday morning, where we are brought to you, as always, by Reckless Coffee Roasters. And it's Wednesday, so I'm back to being the number one dad. Number two dad has connection issues, so he's on his way in somewhere, wherever. But look who's back from the long vacation. I don't know where you been, man.
Not really. I mean, 3 days were vacation. The rest was trying to catch up with my shit after the vacation. So, yeah, I mean, 3 days. Yeah, I could agree with you that it's a vacation, but the rest is not. I got my tall mug here. Reckless mug. I used it last night. Forgot to wash it, so that's.
So you gotta time the mugs and the washing. I think it was the other day. I was like, oh no, I can't use this. And she's like, why? And I was like, because that's tomorrow's, it's Friday. And then she was like, I got the roll, eye roll.
Yeah, Gordo is.
Sir Z says bom dia. Is that what that is? Portuguese for good morning. Okay, hitting Brazil and Portugal at the same time. And Ryan is with us. And he says, thank God John is back. Well, at least there's somebody in the audience.
Yeah, Ryan's in my corner here. My only goal for Ryan is to get him on the other Ryan's corner, which is Ryan Gravenberg. I'm going to get him on the gravy train soon enough, man. And our boy Arne Schlott is going to get Gravenberg up and running, I feel so.
Yeah, I guess let's start the craziness, right? So it is finally official. World's worst kept secrets in some ways, but Arne Slot is official. In fact, for those who are interested, there is now openings for first team set piece coach and things like that in LinkedIn. So if you're are you throwing your name in the hats?
You know what? I might as well send my freaking resume. What am I gonna lose? Right? What are my qualifications? Well, I mean, I'm a pretty good farmer, maybe, or some shit like that. I everyone talks about the whole zonal and man to man. I'm a big man-to-man guy, probably because of my basketball background. Like, I can't. I feel like you gotta simplify it. You gotta follow a person, right? Obviously, there's more to it than that, but I feel like my simplistic brain just goes like, why don't you just pick a guy and follow that guy wherever he goes, right? Kind of. I mean, because if you're talking about a zone, right, you're gonna be like, oh, is this part of my zone? Is that part of my zone, right? And then two people get confused and go like, whereas if it's just a person, like, hey, I got Van Dyke. Well, Van Dyke's my guy. No one's going to get confused, except if you're Darwin Núñez.
The issue with that is, nowadays, see, Matush says no more zonal marking too. I almost feel like zonal marking is a bit easier to get everybody on the same page for as you get different people. And it's harder to get mismatches and stuff like that against, because they don't know how you're going to set the zone. Hey, look who got his connection back.
Did I not loan you his laptop, Gordo?
It's been a day, and this is just added to it. Like with the storms last night, my son was up all night, so like I didn't get my workout done until like 12:30, and then he was up at 4:30, and then at 5 o'clock I was told we were going in a storm with all the outages. So this right now is like the only thing keeping me alive. Plus add into like the allergies, so it looks like I'm like 95 years old. I'm struggling.
Yeah, I was gonna say we did have some ridiculous winds over here yesterday in Chicagoland. So yeah, a lot of power outages, I assume, from that thing.
Yeah, this morning there was like 701 power outages affecting like 14,900 something customers. So
Jesus.
Okay. Is that like a lot though? Like, see, you threw some numbers out there, but the other day he was like, it was iffy it was gonna be on or not because the weather was gonna be rough. Yep. And then he threw out a number like only 800 people don't have power. Like, you're gonna be poo-pooed the number.
So in the Chicagoland area, like the comment territories probably services like 49,000 people or something. So thanks, Susie. That's how I feel. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. I woke up this morning and I was like, man, I'm not gonna, all the calls that I have for storm related stuff, like I'm just gonna turn my camera off, and I'm like, shit, I have the podcast today. I'm gonna have to be on camera.
So zonal, we were just talking about that. So hopping right into the conversation. Zonal marking or man-to-man marking and set piece. We're putting our resume together to go in there. So maybe we can all get one resume together. You're like, you know what's better than one special teams coach? Or what do they call it? What is the title? Set piece coach. A bunch of guys saying a bunch of different shits. Like
we do it in the Step Brothers style, where we all we sit behind each other.
Right.
Pan or Pam?
Yes, just tell each person to find someone there, hide and stay with him, says Matush. See, I feel like man-to-man these days are a lot harder with the almost like the picks team set. It's a lot easier to get somebody isolated and alone. And as a defender, I'd rather know this as opposed to, I feel like it's less watching as a zone defending as opposed to the man-to-man. You can more focus on the ball, not as much on the player. Does that sound right?
Yeah. The one thing, though, it doesn't matter what team you watch, whether they do a zonal or whether they do a man-to-man. If a goal is scored from the defending, everyone always goes like, yeah, who had that guy? It doesn't matter.
That's true.
You know, even I've seen like man-to-man where it's like, no, that was clearly your guy that ran away. And it's still like, who looking around for who's supposed to be picking him up?
Once his name comes to mind in the League Cup final, Disasi.
Yeah,
I think he was marking Virgil, and then he was like rolling on the floor. I was like, dude, that's your man. What are you so upset about?
That was your guy.
I don't know, like, you know, I remember, like, you know, when something like that happens, like, if you do not know and if you're watching, just look at who every player is looking at. Because they know, like, when it happens, everybody's like, bro, that was yours. Like, and then, you know, you don't want to throw your teammate under the bus and then you're like, damn it, and you keep going or whatever. But yeah, it's instant. Everybody will be like, it's you. That was you, dude. He was yours. And that's why I feel like man-to-man is a lot harder to, I think, like, establish in some ways, and depends on the players you have. I mean, here's the thing: if you're a smaller team, and I don't know if this is why more teams are switching to zonal than before, because if you have a smaller team, you can get outmatched by a team, you know, like get that mismatch in there. Whereas it feels like zonal, you can have the correct people in place to protect the zones. I mean, I don't know if that's the thinking behind it, but I just feel like I can see why more and more teams are preferring zonal.
I always preferred to play against a zonal D. Like, if I was on the attacking side of a corner, I always preferred the defense to be zonal. I always felt I could always get more space. But that was also like high school and, you know, like D1 college, where, you know, most of the people are like, okay, I just stand right here. Whereas, like, I feel like in the Premier League, they kind of had an idea of like, oh, you have to move. It's a little more fluid than just like, coach told me to stand here and I don't move.
I'm just putting it from the perspective of my simpleton brain. If someone tells me to mark a zone, I'd be like, oh, so this count as my zone? Does this count as my zone? I'd rather just go like, hey, mark him. I'd be like, same. Yes, you got it. You got it. Like, I will do it with so much gusto. Like,
see, like, if you're attacking, I feel like, you know, then you see the dude, you're like, okay, so I got to beat this dude. You know, like I think I always thought it was a lot more specific. Whereas the other one, it's kind of like a potluck, right? When it's a zone, you're like, oh, let's attack over here. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Whereas I felt like if it's man-to-man, you're like, oh, this is the dude I got to beat. And then if you were defending, which, like I say, like back in the day when I was playing, it was pretty much all man-to-man. And, you know, it was like, so I got to chase this dick around the box for the next, like, 30 seconds kind of a deal, which was never fun because, you know, obviously I'm not a tall guy and I was that's why I took the front post. That's the best place to be.
For St. Louis University, we used to do this thing where you'd line up with somebody, but you switched with someone as the corner was coming in. So, like, you were actually you were marking another player. I always thought it was the most confusing thing in the whole world. But, like, it gave that, I mean, you do it once and then they kind of understand what's going on. So the defenders think they're being, or the attackers are thinking that there's a mismatch. And so they're targeting a player, and then that player kind of rotates out as the corner comes in, and the person that's supposed to be marking that guy is now marking the guy. So like it kind of nullifies the corner, but the teams picked up on it so quickly.
And that's the thing. That's why I feel like when I put my resume in, I'm going to be like, hey, we're going to change, because then, people can't prepare against you. Because you know what Mateusz is saying, being man-to-man and then switching on those picks, I feel like that'll be eaten alive. So suddenly you'll have all kinds of center backs matched up with, because of the way they line up the picks and stuff, you're going to be matched up with like Mac or somebody like that, and it's going to be, or everybody's going to be like, how can we match up somebody with Trent or somebody like that, or like Robo? Well, Robo is usually like front post, but like that's what they're going to try to do. So I don't know. Alan says Verge does that beautifully. It's a Dutch thing to point the finger at someone else. Here's a good question. Like, I mean, there's so much
is really good
to talk about, but do you want that? Because doesn't that also go to accountability? Like I'm not gonna talk to you for 10 minutes on the pitch that you screwed up, but I will let you know that was yours. That was yours to take care of, and you screwed up. I don't know if I'm gonna point a finger, but it's gonna be pretty obvious because I'm gonna probably come and talk to you or yell at you and stuff like that. Do you want that or do you not want that? Because I personally don't take offense to that, because I feel like, especially because he's a captain, and leave alone before he was a captain, he's almost like the captain of the defense before he was the captain of the team, right? I do want somebody holding everybody accountable there. So I'm okay with that. John, are you okay with that if I'm like, hey, you didn't show up last week, for example?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd be the first one to raise my hand. Like, for example, I was going to actually bring this up when we were talking about the set piece. You guys have been watching longer than I have. Have you ever seen a player who was at fault just go like this? Like, my bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, because I've never seen a player.
Really? No,
yeah, I've never seen a player.
That was on me.
Yeah, like for example, you get beaten on a header. Like most of them are just like this or whatever, just staring into the sky. But then like I've never seen someone like for example, the Sassi example. Like bro was looking at everyone but himself, even though Virgil was his man.
I don't know if he was mad at that time because he got picked off, or they had practiced against that. See, that's the thing you don't know, is like they might have practiced against that, and he said, we freaking talked about this. When this happens, so and so is supposed to come around the corner or whatever, and his EY is upset. Ryan says, I see with bad passes.
Yeah, well, to answer your question, Tim, I don't
bad
mind.
passes all the time.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, you don't mind. I mean, I guess here's the thing. The body language of the guy who screwed up, right? There are a lot of times where, like I said, something happens, everybody turns around and looks at that guy. If that guy looks like, yeah, I screwed up on that one, like looking down, you can see from the body language that he knows it was his fault. But if you see the guy over there saying like, what happened over there? I'll tell you what fucking happened over there. That was your guy. Is what I was going to let him know. Where are you at with that, Gordo? Like the finger pointing, all for it.
Well, I think what Ryan means is Verge is good at doing it when it's his fault. Like he's good at pointing to somebody. He's always like, what? And it's like, God, that was you. That was your guy, dude. That was you, 100%. So I had somebody like that too, because you never know what happens in the locker room. We had a player like that in my junior year of high school, where he was like one of the best players in the state, central defender, and you knew that even if he was the one that let the goal in, everyone around him was going to get an earful about marking responsibilities. And then after the game, he's like, I know that was me. I'm sorry. I just lost myself in the moment. So like it became this thing where like you became so numb to getting chewed out by him that it kind of lost the effect of being chewed out. But like when it was actually your fault, then you knew, because it was like a different tone. He could switch between like, that was me. This is my reaction to being embarrassed, as opposed to this is my reaction to being really upset.
Well, let me, since you guys, John keeps bringing up Chelsea, let's talk about this first. This sparked a lot of conversation yesterday with Pochettino leaving with mutual consents. What do you guys make of that? Because honestly, we talked about this, Mateusz knows, and then we can make fun of it afterwards that, when we were playing Chelsea as the first game of the season, I mean, I remember I kept saying, hey, this is the best time to play him before they figure stuff out. And then they were kind of like a laughing stock for a long time, where we couldn't even beat him the first game. But then, we were like, that was nothing to worry about anyway. I guess they were going to suck. But you could tell overall, and I think in the next graphic that we're going to look at, that you actually shared. Well, let's do it right here. You could tell they were kind of figuring things out, and you can see in the second part of the season, Chelsea is fourth with points. So did Chelsea just blow it then, John, by getting rid of this guy? Because I really thought he was, if anybody, he was the man to kind of slowly establish things, and it feels like he was, and now it's down the drain.
Yes, I am 1000% against this firing because I don't know if I mentioned it. I like Pochettino. I feel like he's a good manager to bring in if you want to build a team. And Chelsea, with all their young guys, Jackson and Nkunku, all those guys, they're young. They've still got some pieces that they've still got aspects of their game that they need to develop. And I think, looking back at Poch's body of work, obviously people make fun of the no trophies thing with Spurs, but look at what he's done with that team. He's made them, like, obviously, Tottenham syndrome, Spursy and all that is what gets publicized by the media. But that Spurs team was a pretty difficult team to play against and beat for years, probably until they lost that Champions League final against us. That's when things started to unravel. But before that, they were a pretty respectable team. And that's, all credit to Poch, building that team up. Harry Kane, Son, Dele Alli, all those guys, they came in as uncut gems. And then they came out as diamonds. So I don't know what the Chelsea management is doing. Like, you give this guy time. Like, if you think about Klopp's first season with us, we were making good progress in the cups, but in the leagues, we weren't doing too good either, right? Like, they made the final of the League Cup, which we did as well during Klopp's first season. We made the Europa League final and lost that. They didn't. Okay, fine. But then, that second half of the season table where they're third in a 19-game sample size is pretty good viewing. So why? Right? Why? There is something going on there that's working. So why break it up?
I mean, my theory is, I don't know what you think, Gordo. Ryan says he had to deal with the pressure of playing high-paid players in the beginning of the season. He got things pretty figured out at the end of the season. They fired him. I take him as Liverpool manager, which I actually kind of agree to. But my thing is, I think it has a lot to do with what Ryan said earlier. I think the reason they're parting way is what Pochettino sees long term is different than what the club sees long term, and I think with what Pochettino sees, maybe some of the ridiculously overpaid players, he's like, no, this is just not the right one. And meanwhile, because they just bought these guys randomly and spent all this money, they're like, well, we spent all this money, we got to play him. And I feel like in the background that has to be the disagreement, because like John is saying, you just can't be looking at the performance and saying this is not going the right way. It's definitely going like in the right direction. I mean, as a Liverpool fan, I actually like seeing this. And as kind of like somebody who likes Pochettino, I kind of like seeing this because I feel like he came out of the circus and he can go to a proper club now. But what do you think? I mean, Gordo, like, why do you think this ended up being this way?
It has to be backroom stuff. I can see this being something where Poch wanted more control over resources in the beginning of the year. He wasn't given it because they're like, hey, we already had these kind of players in mind, so we're going to go ahead and buy them. And he was sort of against it, and then it didn't work out. And then he turned it around in the second half and basically probably went back to him and said, all right, let's see what I can do with when I mold the team. Now I need more responsibility in the transfer market. I want more say, and it probably wasn't going that way. But to suggest that Chelsea has a long-term plan, I think is being very nice. I mean, I think the All-Star game for Todd Boehly is where his mind's at, North versus South All-Star game. So I don't think there's a long-term plan in Chelsea. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. One of the things we talked about, I potted last night too, and one of the things we talked about there was look at the teams that did well. Look at how big of the gap there was between Villa and Liverpool. And those top three teams, what did they have in common? They had longevity in the coaching position and the manager position. And look at Arteta's first season even, and how bad that was. There was Arsenal fans, some of my friends were calling for his head, and when that his second season didn't start very well, they were like, yeah, it's time to move on from him. He doesn't know what he's doing. And they gave him time, they stuck by him, they gave him the money, they gave him the players, and now look at his team. And it's just with Chelsea, the carousel that they've been on, they needed to stay with the manager. And when you look at that, there's only one team that even comes close to them in terms of the difference between the first and the second half of the season, and that's Crystal Palace. And
Yes.
based on the results of the FA Cup, Chelsea could get Europa League from basically being in 11th all season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I you'd have to argue that Poch should have been maybe the second half manager of the season in terms of like where they were and then what they could possibly achieve based on results this Saturday.
Matthew says there are players that are on 6-7 year contracts. Of course, they have a long term plan. I think that was the issue. Like we even talked about it then. When you sign people and you're on the hook for them for 6 or 7 years, they're gonna have more power at the end. You have to play these guys now, regardless of what they do. And I think as a player, when you give, I mean, yeah, they're all professionals and stuff like that, but maybe they're not as professional once they know the next 7 years are secured and not playing for a contract 3 years down the road or not knowing their future, or their minutes and stuff like that being on the line based on how they perform and how they practice and how they care themselves. Sergi says, can't compare. Who the hell is comparing Poch with Klopp?
I mean, I just compared the first seasons, but
yeah, because here's the difference. Like,
poor John. That's going to be another clip going out.
Right, I just compared the first season, bro. I never said he was Klopp.
But they blew their midfield up too, right? Like that. You're not supposed to do that. Like how Chelsea's season went is how ours potentially could have gone.
Yes. We expected it to go, really, right?
Yes.
Yep.
You can't like destroy your middle, like basically the transition between your defense and offense, and bring in all new players that haven't played for the club before, that are young. That's what's supposed to happen. And for him to have gone through that and at the end of one season figured it out and potentially on the verge of European Cup, I think it's ridiculous that he was fired. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make it has. That's why I feel like there's so much more background drama regarding probably these contracts that Mateusz was talking about, and like who's gonna get to play and how come this guy didn't play and stuff like that, regardless of how things were going. Sergi says, why do people... I am not getting into this Poch versus Rodgers thing that you guys got going on the Discord channel. You guys have fun with that. I actually rate him. I think he's like a good manager overall. I mean, you got to figure, you see what's Ange going through at Tottenham, and he took that club to the Champions League final. And Tottenham, when he was there, was a pretty tough team to play against. It wasn't a fixture you looked forward to, and they played good football, and he got more out of this play. I think he's one of those managers, when he goes there, some of the players improve radically. He can get more out of them. I mean, Chelsea job, I mean, if I were him, I would not have taken the Chelsea job knowing what a shit show it's going to be. So that's his bad, but money talks, I guess, or maybe he thought, there's some kind of an ego. I overall kind of like how he carries himself and stuff like that more than anything
and
else.
Credit to him, he managed to salvage an unwinnable situation.
Yeah,
he managed to get like a mini win. Like, it's not a win-win, it's just like a mini win, but then he'll take it all day long considering what he had to inherit, like
this is probably the dark spot in his thing, right? Like not being able to win the French league with PSG, I think is kind of like a tough one. Maybe he is more a manager that's built for like a Villa, like a West Ham, like a team that's maybe is slightly underdog, but he's going to improve everybody and get more out of them.
Yeah, he is like a Pulis with Stoke.
Not that low. Come on now.
His football is
he's Norwich City's next manager.
Yeah, his football is at least attractive to watch at times, right? Like,
I think he maybe is not meant for dealing with the top tier and trying to manage those guys like he was with PSG, and maybe he's not that great with managing egos, but he is good at managing and getting more out of players that he has. And you got to figure, when you get somebody a 6-year, 7-year contract, when you're signing people for 80, 100 million, you are dealing with a lot of egos. Let them sell Gallagher and Chalobah and continue the downfall. And that's, like a player like Gallagher, I know he's a pain in the ass to play against, but I would be all over that if we were able to sign a player like that personally.
Did you guys see the news that apparently we were supposed to be in for Nkunku over Nunez?
And yeah, I saw that. I don't know, do you guys put any stock to that? It's kind of like the same thing we were talking about, where now that Slot is here, this whole thing came out about like how Slot was hired, And I almost feel like that's being put out there by like different people because they're not going to come out and be like, yeah, this guy said no, that guy said no, so we have to
Right.
go to the third guy. What are you going to do? So there's a story, and it might be accurate, but it's really shady that it comes out afterwards, and it's like a month-old story. Like it has been progressing. So why didn't you report it that they were meeting in Amsterdam then, kind of a thing, if you
Right.
knew about it? But Shelton
Right.
said they should have stuck with Potter if they want a young manager. I mean, I guess the thing is, in terms of we always talk about, people always bitch about FSG not investing in the squad, blah blah blah. So this is kind of like an opposite situation there, John. Where is this like a really attractive proposition for a manager, especially a young manager? Probably not an experienced
Chelsea,
one. But for an experienced manager, is this a situation you want to walk into?
It's a situation that maybe you'd want to walk into, but then you'd probably do it for 3 years max. I saw pictures of some rumors of Mourinho on Twitter, and it seems like a project for him, to be fair, where he just stick around for 2 years, right, and then try and get as much as possible with the squad, contracts and everything be damned, right? Like, because let's be real, when Mourinho leaves a club, it's in freaking shambles, right? So, I don't know. For a young manager, definitely not. Like, you see what happened to.
I know, that's why I'm worried that his name is being thrown around with Fenerbahce, and I'm like, it would be great for a season, but what the fuck are we gonna do afterwards? Like,
right.
They bring him in. He's got to wear like a clown outfit the first press conference.
Yeah, but Mourinho, I mean, okay, like, let me reverse the thing then, Gordo. Do you think you would hire a guy like Mourinho if you can't get Pochettino to do like what you're asking him to do? As hell, Mourinho is not gonna do it, and even worse, unlike Pochettino, is probably gonna come to the press conference and talk shit about you, whereas Poch would probably take the high road.
Todd Boehly strikes me as a guy who has like big truck syndrome. If for the viewers of the family friendly show, we'll say big truck syndrome, and
that's very family friendly, yeah.
and Mourinho would have all the chips, right? He would have everything if he wants that job. In order for him to put pen to paper, they really wanted him. He's got most of the bargaining chips, and he would probably make it very painful for Todd Boehly, and I don't think Todd Boehly would do it. So I don't see Mourinho going there. I saw that they were looking at Ipswich's McKenna because they really he's a good manager. But if I was like a Chelsea player that was making what some of those guys do, and all of a sudden they brought in a championship manager, I'd be thinking of my options to move elsewhere as well. So like that in itself, and I agree with John, I don't think it's a job for a young manager. It's got to be somebody that's experienced, that can handle the pressure. But I will say this, if they put that on LinkedIn, if they put their head manager on LinkedIn, I think we should go for it, because what did Chelsea do? The first 10 or 11 games, I think they got 2 wins. I think that collectively as a group, we could get Chelsea 2 wins in 11 games. So,
right.
Dude, we could put all kinds of American stuff in the resume, like build with draft picks and stuff. Todd doesn't know that there's no draft, so put a bunch of stuff out there. Yeah, I'm gonna do all kinds of stuff with the first round, trade a couple of lower rounds and stuff like that. And Todd would be like, see, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then you get hired. You never know. It is a poisonous job. And it almost feels like, John, if the young guy is out of the picture, which I feel like a young guy, an experienced guy, is the only guy who's going to basically do as instructed or walk into a situation knowing they're going to be instructed on things. It will end up being a guy like Mourinho, who at this point has been fired from several high-profile jobs. Like Tuchel is another good example. I'm not putting Ryan's last comment on screen. We're trying to stay family-friendly. It's first thing in the goddamn morning. But I feel like, it has to be somebody like that who, and I don't know if I like managers like that after a certain point, where getting fired is not a thing for them, because it's like, been there, done that. I'll just go to another big club kind of thing. Mourinho can't say that. Tuchel can't say that. There are 4 or 5 guys who can just say, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to get fired, and then, just collect the wages and leave.
Yeah, but Mourinho, it's like he knows that he's going to get another job anyway.
All these guys eventually, it's like the NBA, right? Like a retread, like Doc Rivers going from team
Oh,
to
boy.
team, not winning
Yeah,
anything anywhere. But somebody was like, he'll win here. Like, we'll give him a job and he'll win here.
Yeah, it's and I think it was Ryan who said that he's really intrigued to see what's going to happen, over the next summer, over this summer for Chelsea rather, because as an outsider looking in, it's all fun in games, right? But I'd hate to be a Chelsea fan right now. My cousin is a Chelsea fan, and oh boy, he still stands by the fact that they should have stuck with Potter and given him time, which I do agree. Like again, if we all thought like Chelsea, Klopp would be out after his first year, right? So there has to be a project there. There has to be a semblance of continuity. So yeah, it's how it is.
Do you think it's a different scenario though? I know exactly what you mean, and I'll get you in more trouble by comparing Klopp and
Go ahead.
Potter over here. But to be fair, in some ways, you would think the bar for what Pochettino should be doing or whatever, fair or not, was probably higher because Klopp walked into a mess, whereas this guy walked into $1 billion squad.
Well, it was $1 billion mess, to be fair.
True.
Right.
I get that, but in terms of expectations at the end of the season, everybody knew Klopp had to build a team and stuff like that over time, and that's kind of like, thank God, is the management we have that thinks more long term. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Pochettino, it almost felt like they got all these golden pieces. Somebody just has to make him play right together. But then it's not that easy, obviously.
Right. But then with those golden pieces, Tim and Gordo, you can chime in as well. But which of those players are actually truly world class? Right. You got Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez.
Who we had a hard on or a big truck.
We had a hard on. Right. We had a hard on, but I wouldn't say they're like what Sergio Busquets, Luis Suarez level where you have them on your squad and you expect to win outright. Like, I wouldn't say so, at least personally. Like, when I see their lineup, yeah, sure, maybe I expected Chelsea to make at least top 5 this year, but I never expected them to be challenging for the top 3, even with that expensive a roster, because I felt like no matter how expensive those players were, it was more a bank on potential than rather what they give now. If that makes sense.
They overpaid.
I know what you mean, but like Caicedo is a good example. Enzo is a good example where those players, if we got him into our midfield, and Caicedo was almost there, we were like, all right, we're winning the title. Like, because that was the best 6 we could ever get at the time. So you have the league's best number 6 on paper. I mean,
but then we
like that, obviously.
Right, but then Chelsea don't have Mo Salah. They don't have Virgil van Dijk. They don't have Alisson.
They have what's the fast kid's name? Shakhtar guy.
Mudryk.
Right. Yeah, Mudryk, he can run fast. I don't know. Like, I feel like there is at least, if you took players Gordo out of there, I think you would. Like sometimes you make a joint squad kind of a thing. When you look at like a Chelsea squad, I feel like there are 5-6 guys at least you would say, oh yeah, I'll take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, if you dismantle it, most of those players would probably slide into the majority of the 20 teams in the Premier League starting 11, for sure.
Yeah, but would they slide into like us, City? I feel like there's 4 or 5 guys that would make their way easily.
Yeah. If you're going and buying Endo Fernandez, he's gonna play, right? Like that would be you would definitely go after. We were definitely going to be trying to start Caicedo for sure. Yeah. If we bought him, he was going to be he was maybe going to be the linchpin at the beginning. Obviously, now we kind of laugh about that because it didn't really work out for Chelsea, but like that was our thoughts at the beginning of the year for sure. Cole Palmer for sure with the last couple of months that he's had with Chelsea, consistent goal scorer. He makes it into. I bet you he would make it into City squad. I bet you Pep's. I don't think Pep's kicking himself, but like I bet that they don't have Haaland and Palmer's probably winning Golden Boot this year, for City.
Yeah.
So I know it's the thing is like part of the reason that I love this sport, and you guys probably feel the same way, is like this is one sport where a collective 11 will always beat like a world 11. And there is no other sport like that on the planet where like you could have a group of hardworking individuals all on the same page, maybe one superstar in there, and they could dismantle a superstar team. I mean, I always think about like when I first really started to pay attention, like I've been watching forever, but like when I started to understand the dynamics of the league and how players work and like really understanding the game, I think it was like, was it the 07 or 08 Spurs? They like went nuts. Like Daniel Levy had just came in and they purchased all these different players. And they were like, this is going to be the greatest team ever assembled. And it didn't work. And everyone's like, why? It's like, well, because you just bought names, right? You bought jerseys. And I feel like that's part of the problem with United over the last couple of years is instead of being like, all right, we are in a rut. Yes, we're Man United, but we need to buy pieces that are like more stability and less like that will fly off the racks at the team shop. And they haven't been able to get over that hump. And that's, I think, a little bit of what Chelsea did, and obviously overpaid for them, which puts a lot of pressure, especially on young kids. We see it all the time. But yeah, I think you're right in the sense that like a lot of those, maybe 4 or 5 of those guys would slide into City's and Liverpool's starting 11.
And does that show, going back to what you're saying, John? I mean, in terms of, goal pieces, but if you don't have time to make him work together, or is it too many? Like, I don't know, like we say Enzo and Cassette, I mean, you name it. I mean, they spent freaking bazillion dollars just on their midfield, and you can't play them all. But now you put yourself in a situation where you have to play all these high dollar guys because A, you pay them a lot of money, and B, they're here for the next 6-7 years. So you're kind of like stuck with them. And that's why it's probably kind of like a lost cause for any manager who comes in. Because if they're coming into the interview, if they see the LinkedIn and they come to the interview and they're like, yeah, this team should do this, they're like, yeah, see, the problem is we can't do that because that guy is going to be here for 7 years. So you're going to have to use him. It's almost like forced management. You're just going to be a puppet regime.
Well, the thing with the, forced management, like, okay, it's not nice to hear, but then with Poch, something was happening. Like there was a flower that was blooming there, regardless of whether it was forced or not. So he was gonna make it work, which is why it makes the whole firing pretty questionable. I'm gonna bite here with Sir Z's comment. Apart from Caicedo potentially, which Chelsea players, well, I'd take Palmer as a 9 all day long. If we had Palmer as our 9, we win the league.
Yeah, I take Palmer. Like I don't know if I put him into the starting 11, but I would love to have a guy like Gallagher be coming off the bench and stuff like that in the 60th minute, for example. I know we can Caldwell. Somebody mentions. I would love to have him as a center back. Yeah, there are a lot of players I think that would fit, and I would love to have him. Maybe not in the starting 11, but definitely in the squad. I mean, I would take Endo. I know he's like a very annoying dude. But if he played for us, I think we would love him because he's that kind of a player, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But hey, the drama continues. We'll have some shit to talk about on the panel show for months to come. But I mean, let's face it. We were talking in the panel show throughout the season. Well, at least in the first part of the season, and we never thought we were talking about like, are they going to be in the top 10? And we're like, yeah, it doesn't look like it. Like, would United be in the top 10? And I think most of us picked United over Chelsea over time just because we thought, oh, they have like a lot more established pieces. They'll put it together kind of a deal. But yeah, I thought Poch was doing well over there. So like I say, it's good for the league, good for us, and really ultimately good for Pochettino. Somebody's probably telling him that too. They're like, dude, this is like a silver lining. This is a blessing for you kind of thing. Yeah. Would Poch go to United now, who wanted them initially? Let's start the rumors.
He'd be an idiot to go to United. Yeah, sorry, Gordo, go ahead.
I bet he goes to Bayern.
That's a good possibility too. There are some clubs out there.
I saw Vincent Kompany was one of the managers floating around for Bayern, and I'm like, okay, it was Monday, and I was like, the league's been done for a day. Okay, let's relax a little bit. I don't think that Vincent Kompany is getting the Bayern Munich job.
Yeah, they threw that out there. Hold on. Now Alan says, I prefer Gordo's cap to yours. I think that's not the cap. That's how Gordo wears his caps, because like mine over here has a lot more curvature. There you go. Gordo's from the Chicago hood. So, he still has like the stickers on there and everything. Egypt wants Mo to play 85 games a year. Do you guys put any stock on this? I know, and would it be a huge ordeal if he went to this Olympic mess?
Yes, I feel, especially if we're keeping him next year. Like we saw Salah towards the end of the season, like he's suffering with injuries. He didn't look 1,000% fit. So I feel like he's one of those players that needs an actual break to get himself back into form, endurance wise and technique wise, because like it's kind of like a domino effect. If you're not feeling 100% physically, like all those mental lapses he had where he couldn't finish, he couldn't make the final pass, couldn't take on that final shot, it kind of comes back to bite him. And listen, if I'm still 50-50 on Salah staying with us after this summer, but if he is, this is if there is truth to it, it could be massive news for us in terms of our star player being up for it 1,000%, because Salah is a great starter, right? He's a great starter of seasons, I noticed, but he doesn't necessarily finish everything as well as he would like. The fact that if he gets into this tournament, I feel like that window where he finishes seasons poorly is going to come quicker than we would like. So I'd rather not, obviously. Hopefully there's no truth to it,
I mean, it makes Slot's gig a lot harder as well in some ways, Gordo, because he already has the Euro, so it's already going to be like a shorter summer with a new team. So it makes it a lot trickier, especially we know there's going to be some changes coming in. We were actually talking about this, so let me pick your guys' brain. We're talking about it on Monday. Bickler and I were putting money on the fact that we expect some moves Bickler said as soon as this weekend. I know about that. I'm thinking more within the next 7 to 10 days, we will have some signings announced or some departures confirmed before the Euros happen. So, Gordo, do you think action happens before or after the Euros?
Yeah, I think you have to move quick right now, because how many times have we seen it where like players sit on it, they go to the tournament and then they have a change of heart, or like somebody else is there. So I feel like Liverpool, although they, especially with Edwards at the helm now, are like shrewd in the way that they go about their transfers. It's very quick. It's like, we want you. Okay, you don't want us. Fine, we're moving on. So that bodes to them moving before the Euros. And secondly, I feel like clubs like us, there's a couple of them that I feel like if players are like, hey, you like respect, I'd like to focus on Euros, or I'd like to be with the team and focus on that right now, and we'll talk later. And there's some other teams, I won't name names, I think we can all probably point to one or two that probably don't ignore that. They're in his inbox and they're sliding into his DMs all the time and spicing it up, and then Euros come out and all of a sudden it's like 2 days after Euros or 2 days after their team gets kicked out, and then they're holding up somebody else's jersey. So I think that if you want a player, then you go after him soon. Edwards knows who he wants. That's why we all like him. He's probably already got a short list of 10 players, and he'll go after 5 or so and get the job done.
That's what I expect too. I think this has all been talked, and it could be a bunch of guys that I get the feeling that, we might not be overly excited about, just hopeful about because Slot knows them, or maybe because like Edwards gets him. So like, obviously, it just got official, John, even though it's been probably known for a while. I already see a lot of like doubts online before the guy even like had a chance to say anything. I mean, you see like, how much Feyenoord like values him by his departure. He got like a similar farewell over there. And mind you, he was only there like 3 seasons or something like that, right? And he got like a club-like farewell ceremony over there, and the fans love him there, and they feel like it's a big loss. How long before people at least start giving him a chance? Is it going to take like a press conference and for him to say something in that press conference that people are going to be like, yeah, let's get behind this guy? Because before his official arrival and walk around with Liverpool stuff on, it just feels like there's way too much doubt. A lot of people are not sold on him.
Well, it doesn't help that the guy who he's replacing is Klopp, right? But then the fact that Klopp himself got on the stage, grabbed that mic, and started chanting Arne Slot should kind of open our eyes a little bit. Like, hey, let's back this guy. Come on. Like, if we got the big guy here.
Okay, let me ask you this.
I know where you're going.
Don't you think Klopp would do the same thing if, like, Emeram was there, but a different song?
True. But then it's more the symbolism of it.
True.
It's more the symbolism. Like, obviously, just put logic aside here. And I'd like to believe that Liverpool fans, at least majority of Liverpool fans are a bit more knowledgeable on the sport, where they would give him the benefit of the doubt, would give him time. It's not like he's going to get us relegated, right? What I like about Slot and what he's bringing in is that his style.
Just don't even.
Why the fuck would you even put that out there?
Great. Son of a bitch.
What did I say? What did I say? I don't get it.
You said
Oh my
he's not
god,
gonna get relegated. Let's clip. We're gonna clip that. We'll play it this time next year. Be like,
Oh
remember when
dear. You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna clip that for the views, and people are gonna get on my ass again. But at least we'll get interaction. But yeah, what I was saying is what I like about Slot and what he's gonna bring in is that he's not too big of a departure from Klopp in terms of the style. So these players that we're bringing in right now, at least a certain majority, they're not necessarily hand in glove fits, but they'd fit in quite well to his style. So I see the logic that Edwards went in here. Like we already have a core of established players. So we might as well get the manager that wherein they could come in and then fit the best. So I'm not too afraid. I feel like my worry for him is that how the results will go in for the first few weeks or so. And then, obviously the fickle fans are going to start getting on their high horses and calling Slot out. Oh, he's nowhere not like Klopp and stuff like that. That's my biggest thing for him.
Alan says it's Slot, not Slot.
What happened to family friendly? Jesus.
I was actually watching a Feyenoord thing on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh, that's how they really say it." It was like Slot, with the weird in there. So it's Slot. Okay, so Slot. That's why I think we just should fucking stick with Arnie. Okay, like he's gonna teach. One of his biggest tasks is teaching the offside rule. That's especially since it's gonna be changing to Nunez. But all joking aside, like if you have a to-do list, if you're Arne Gordo, you're coming in and on the plane, you're making yourself a to-do list. What is the number one thing on your to-do list? Like teach Nunez offside, or like what is the number one, or get on the good side of Mo, or what are you writing on top as number one?
Yeah, first one is Nunez, underline, circle it, because here's the thing, there are teams that would probably buy him, right? But the teams that are you're not going to make as much money as you paid for him based on his performances, right? Like teams don't want that kind of, there's they can buy somebody else that'll give you exactly what he's given us for much less without the headache of being like, you're like right there, guy. You're right there. That's why it's so frustrating. And so I think that would be my number one thing. And I said it before. We finished 7th. Darwin Nunez comes in with half as many offsides, and his expected goals goes down. Then I'll get a tattoo of Arne Slot and Nunez kissing on my back.
Okay, that's a clip right there. I'll mark it right here because that is a clip.
Because I think that is the hardest. That's the hardest job for him. Because look, he's got the backing. We've said it. Like his front office is phenomenal. All right, if you're a young manager taking on a job as big as the Premier League, you're going to want somebody to back you, like he has. He's also got a team that's basically Jurgen Klopp is basically. I still think that Jurgen probably saw this as like he was going to finish out the contract that he already signed, and then he was going to walk away. But progress happened a lot faster than he anticipated and decided to walk away. So he's got a ready-made team. His front office is phenomenal. I still do think it's going to take him some time because it's the Premier League, right? This isn't Feyenoord, right? It's going to be a lot tougher. So it's going to take him some time to get his feet under him. But he shouldn't have problems finishing top 4 in terms of like the rest of the teams are still there. Look at all the teams that finished below us. How many of those teams do you feel are ready to get into the top 4? Compared to us and where our team's at? Not many. But the Nunez thing is going to be the hardest thing for him. If he can do that in his first season, man, he's got my heart. That's for sure.
I don't want to give another hot
By the way, because I'm going to come to you because you're probably going to talk about gravy, but I'm going to come to you, John. But Sergi says, is John saying slot or slot? And I do apologize for the colorful language our microphones are picking up over the next probably like 3 years as John talks about our new manager over here and keeps calling him Slut. But yes, what's Slut number one?
I'll just call him Arnie then, right? It's much better.
Poor John. he comes back after weeks and then just gets morning abuse for like an hour straight. So yes, now it is your turn to talk about slots. What do you think the number one job is aside from working Gravy into the starting 11? What is the number one job?
I guess maintain the same position or better it. Like if we're talking about what we would expect from next season, obviously we don't have the new signings and everything yet. But I will say it, and whatever happens, obviously opinions change with like hindsight and everything. Like if we start off the way we started this year, where we're like first at December, next year if we finish top 4 and get a trophy, I feel like it's an absolute success. Like I'm not even. I context be damned. Whatever happens, even if we bottle it in the last second or whatever, right? Like I think it's a success because.
But to get there, if Slot is saying, hey, this is what we want to do the first year, like maybe duplicate this season, right? Top 4 with a trophy, FA Cup, whatever. But then you will be in the Champions League as well. Yeah. So, but if you are like listing the kind of shit that you have to do, what are you putting on your number one?
Try and find a permanent role for Sobo. Like you can make an argument that Harvey Elliott was our first choice right-sided midfielder since December, and that is a big disappointment for Szoboszlai, considering how much we paid for him. Obviously, not to bring money into this, but unfortunately, it's going to be a point of conversation. We paid like what? I forget the figure, but it was still a big amount of money. Yeah. So find a position for him and integrate him as a first-choice starter. Because listen, he's got the talent. He's got the raw skill. It's just finding that right position for him. Darwin Núñez is Darwin Núñez. And not to go into hot take mode this early, but I would sell him right now. Because if we're thinking long-term, we need a killer as a number 9. We need someone close to an Erling Haaland as we could. And it's not Darwin Núñez. Like, as Kazi keeps saying, it's not like he's 21 or 20. Right. He's young, but then I don't know, Tim.
Not that I'm very optimistic. I hear you. I'm just trying to be devil's advocate. But here's my thing, I guess. Like, who's gonna buy him? A flag? I mean, like, who's gonna pay? You're selling at the lowest. It doesn't sound like Edwards like.
I feel like it's just that we got to take the loss, man. Because if we're thinking long term, which I'm sure we are, knowing Edwards, it's to get that league title again. It's to get that Champions League again, and to get that, we need a killer. Like, we had 2 killers in Mane and Salah when we won everything. Right now, we have Salah who's declining and no one else.
Right? It could be we need, and I've been saying this for a while, and it might be Gakpo if he accepts the role, because the last couple of games were good, but like it could be that we're just missing the Bobby. We're missing somebody who's like fine with the pass, I don't feel like how many times this season do we see so frustratingly we had the odd man rush and there was no passes. The person that carried it from the halfway line shot the ball so many times. It was so frustrating. All these were all it takes is one pass to the left, one pass to the right, and it's an open goal. And we didn't do it because all those guys up there want the goal. And we just need somebody who'd rather the pass. And maybe if we found that person, then we'd get the production that we're looking for from other people.
I guess it depends on how he's going to play too, though, right? I mean, you're talking about like a number 9. I mean, maybe he doesn't want a number 9 that's a traditional number 9. Maybe he does want a Bobby like number 9, or maybe like, he does want a Núñez like guy, or Gakpo. I mean, Gakpo's a big dude. Like, he doesn't look like he's a tall ass dude. So I feel like, you're right, Gordo. I think he's probably the one that fits the most. But so it just says like Núñez reminds me of Heskey, a confidence player. I guess, I would buy into that theory, but man, we were watching a video last night with Angel about like, it was like Klopp's biggest comebacks. And one of them was like the Newcastle game. You would think, and I think we all thought, John, that after that Newcastle game, like the dam broke, like he was just going to be like getting a hat trick every freaking game and stuff. And he was getting hat trick of offside every freaking game instead.
How many times have we had this false dawn with Darwin? Yeah, it's just unfortunate. Like I
like filling in for Kazi over here. Jeez.
Right, like again, and as Kazi loves to say, I would love Darwin to freaking succeed. I would love him to be our next Torres, man. But then, listen, obviously it's very disingenuous to point the finger at Darwin solely, because let's face it, Diaz, Salah missed a ton of chances as well. But then you're a number 9. You should be burying these. It's not like he was brought in to be a Bobby. No, because Bobby's role was to supply Salah and Mane, who will finish majority of the chances that Darwin has missed. Right? Again,
but the chaos.
Well, here's the thing. At the end of the season, we all this Wild Wednesday group would always say he's better coming off the bench because of the chaos that he brings. And at the end of the season, he stopped even bringing that.
Yeah, exactly.
The game would deflate and go against us when we'd bring him on.
I put that on Klopp, though. I think we said it back then that Gakpo should have started in the 11 and he should have been in that role. I think once we took him from that role and made him a starter and then demoted him back to that role, I think it kind of messed with his head. And going back to, I think, like Sir Z was saying, he is, going through a lot of, like, the mental part of his game is not as strong yet. And that's probably with the age and all that kind of stuff. I feel like, John, we kind of took that away from him. And now he was like, I'm an afterthought, and he didn't do the same thing. Whereas in the beginning, I think maybe he embraced that role a little bit and be like, here I come, ready or not, kind of a thing. And then he would come in and cause the chaos.
Yeah, the coaching thing, I feel like, is a double-edged sword. Like, would you stick with your guy who's missing shot after shot? Like, I understand.
Then why did you put him in?
Because you thought he would start burying those chances, but he hasn't.
But what made you think he was going to bury those chances? I guess that's my thing. Like, what did we see that we said,
right,
because he's going to be really finishing?
Because he's getting into those positions.
Yes.
The problem is he's getting there, but the problem is he's still not finishing.
Yeah.
And you can only take so much games where he's not finishing, right? That's the problem. It'll come back eventually, which is why I understand, like, these last few games, Gakpo hasn't necessarily lit the world on fire, but then he's finishing most of the chances that he's getting in front of goal compared to, like, Nunez, who, when he gets in those positions, you know that it's straight at the goalie. You just do. That last game against Wolves, you knew it was straight at the goalie. You knew.
Well,
and I think, like, sorry, Gordo, but I think, like, that's the thing with Gakpo. Even if he's not finishing, I feel like Gakpo is creating a lot more for others at the same time and moves the ball around. And Gakpo maybe doesn't feel that pressure, like, I'm here to score. Whereas it feels like Nunez feels that pressure, like, I got to do something, I got to score. Whereas Gakpo is very content for being that Bobby role you were talking about, Gordo.
Yeah, that's 100%. I really do think, like, you could tell, like John said, one-on-ones right at the keeper always, because he's thinking about it so much. And that comes with missing chances, and that comes with, being frustrated and not, living up to what you feel that you can do, because he's probably burying everything in training. He's probably going into training. He's got a lot of confidence, no pressure. Nobody's watching him. He's probably putting everything that he touches away. He's probably staying on side because Pep Linders isn't raising the flag. He's probably his offsides. That's probably the problem, right? But no, I like that. The Newcastle game was where I'd lost faith in him, because last year I gave him the benefit of the doubt. First year didn't talk, or like he couldn't talk the language. The whole team wasn't really performing, and then this year it's like, I just couldn't. I was so baffled that, like, we kept, like, everyone, not just at American Scouts, everyone was always like, he's a confidence player, and then he'd get, like, the 2 goals, like, at Newcastle, and it's like there's nothing after that, and then he'd get another goal, like a big goal, and nothing after that. And it's like, okay, if you look at it objectively, because I know, like, sometimes too, like, as fans, like, we really wanted him to succeed, and some people, like, threw everything in him and, like, said all this stuff about him, and it's like, all right, well, I can't go back on it because now I'm, like, invested in it. Like, I've said too much about him, and I really need him to, because now, we attach ourselves to teams and players, and, like, his failure is my failure type thing.
We can do this, Darwin.
Right, exactly. You make me look like an idiot.
That's how I feel with Gravenberch. When Gordo said that, I was like, this is me with Gravenberch.
Or I think, what the biggest thing is? Like, it's not just fandom. I think because when you try to be objective and call it out, now you're slating our players and stuff like that. No, like, I'm just looking at what everybody else would be looking at. I can look at it objectively despite being a fan.
Right, and I also don't want him taking a spot of somebody that maybe doesn't get as many chances, but puts the chances he gets away.
Yeah.
So like I think I'd much rather have someone that, scores 6 goals a season, but gets into 8 chances, right? Than someone that gets into 46 chances and has 11 goals.
I think we could agree that Jaden Danz is probably a better finisher than he is right now in terms of if you put him in that spot. Let's say Nunez's big chance. Let's say he has 20 missed or something like that. You put Jaden Danz there. I think I'd put money on Jaden Danz having a better finishing rate at this point.
I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him.
Yeah,
and then I guess the bigger question is, would Jaden Danz get in those situations?
True.
I'm just playing
I'm just
know.
being overly harsh on Nunez. Thankfully, I'm not with Anan anymore. Otherwise, he'd just be killing me. Right?
Yeah, he would be. I honestly, he's even off the bandwagon. He's just
I mean, if you look at it objectively, how much time would you give a new signing before it's like you're not working out? And it's been 2 years, and I feel like that's a good time to be like, he's not who we thought he was. He had 2 full seasons under the same coach and didn't improve. I don't know. And it could be a situation of maybe Arne Slot comes in and unlocks something that Jurgen couldn't, but I don't know. I think we've seen so much of him. He's had so many chances. It wasn't like Klopp ignored him, right? Klopp gave him chance after chance after chance. Because sometimes you see like somebody falls out of favor and then a new coach comes in and suddenly he's getting minutes and then his consistency comes back and then he becomes like this world-class player, much like Mourinho and Salah, right? Like I would argue that was the problem. Like some people are like, oh, remember, but Mo was a flop at Chelsea, and it's like, well, I think he played 11. He had 11 appearances.
Yeah.
So in a year and a half for Chelsea, so like I would argue he didn't get a chance to show that he was.
No, he did not. I mean, and different positions as well. I mean, this guy is in the middle, and maybe he shouldn't be in the middle, and that's going to be the biggest thing. Like, is Slot going to use him there? Is he going to be used elsewhere? Yeah. But if we did early predictions over here, since I like to end with a prediction. Is he in the squad next year, John?
I think he still is, right? Even though I want him sold, I still think he is. I feel like Slot is going to give him, Arne is going to give him one more season to see how he is and how he fits into the system. See, before we go to Gordo, what worries me about Nunez is, obviously we're transitioning to a new manager, right? Klopp's system is a chance creation machine. The fact that we play such a high line, we play so high risk, benefits our offensive players, I feel like, more than any other system in world football. And the fact that Darwin hasn't been able to break the 15-goal barrier in the league is really telling, I would say. Like, chance after chance after chance. Like, you see what the system does for players like Mane and Salah, who are killers, multiple 20 goals a seasons, right? And I believe Mane got at least 20 in all comps, 20 goals in his first Premier League in a Premier League season by his second season. So yeah, it's really what discourages me from Nunez kind of establishing himself in the Liverpool team, which is why I'd kind of cut my losses now, sadly.
Gordo.
I'm 100% with John. He remains, but if I had to say, he wouldn't be here.
He remains, and I feel like, we're doing the Chelsea thing. I think maybe there is a role for him, but I think we're thinking, going back to what you were saying earlier, Gordo, like, we can get somebody for 15 million for what we expect him to bring. Like, if he's going to be a Divock was a lot cheaper, kind of an ordeal. But I do think, he definitely stays. I don't think we take a loss because it's a huge loss. I don't think Edwards is doing that. But I do think we have a chance with a change in manager, a different voice trying to give you confidence and maybe a different role. And going back to what you were saying, John, I think he kind of fits Klopp's system because he gives that effort and, but it's a misguided effort at times. I think people confuse running fast at people and pressing, and those are not the same things. I would argue that we've gotten a lot better in our press, even though he doesn't look like he's running around and Alan thinks he's not running, or like Gakpo. I think he does. He knows when to run and when to press and stuff like that. Cersei is giving him one more season. So what are you going to do? And I think here's another thing. His system, Slot system, I know what you're saying, John, in terms of like creating positions and stuff. But from what I've seen, and obviously it's probably going to have to be different when it comes to the Premier League slightly, but it does have some aspects that will fit him. And we don't know what the movement is going to be in the off season and who we're going to lose and stuff. But I'm hoping in the next couple of days we're going to start getting some actual news and not just rumors that we can talk about. But if you want to hear more Nunez slating, you can tune in tomorrow night to the Thursday night podcast, where they do a whole lot of that.
If you thought we were bad, listen to if you're a Nunez fan, don't listen to the Thursday night pod.
we at least at least I leave a door open and stuff like that. There is no doors open on Thursday nights. But tune in tomorrow night, 7:00 Central, 8:00 Eastern, to hear it straight from the horse's mouth in terms of like what they would do with, because we just selling Nunez. God knows what they would do to Nunez. But tune in tomorrow night to see that. Until then, have a great Wednesday, everybody. Take care.